And hello, it's Andrew. That's Esme, isn't it? And Sharon. Hey, Sharon, how are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm very,
Good.
very cold. Well, not very, very cold, but it's a blizzard here in Scotland.
Wow.
Not quite, but I heard that it snowed in Burbank. In fact,
Malibu?
it snowed in Malibu today.
It snowed in Malibu. Yeah. I mean, this morning when I got up, it was 40, 41. So it must have gotten in the freezing last night. And then we had these huge, they looked like rain clouds. It didn't rain here. I'm by LAX, but I guess it rained heavily in other places. And there's pictures of Malibu with little bits of snow on the ground.
It's amazing. The world's going mad.
It is. It is. No global warming for sure, right?
No, nothing to do with climate change. No. All right. So, what are we doing today? This is the fourth week of this, joint approach with the Music to Grief 2 playlist and Sharon from Grief Reiki as we're celebrating her new course, How to Heal Yourself While You Are Grieving. And it's the online course and it's in 4 parts. And this fourth week, we're looking at the fourth part, which is the spiritual aspect of your grief journey. So on Monday, we did a little overview about that. And what I wanted to look a little more into today is the Reiki aspect of that. So just give us a little overview into how the Reiki works with the spiritual aspect of grief, Sharon.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the energy centers that we have in our body. And because grief is a depleting emotion, depleting activity, energy depleting, I should say, those spiritual energy centers can be blocked or become imbalanced. And as a result, we experience certain things as part of our grieving process, loss of hope, loss of joy in our lives, stress and strain. And spiritually, that can wear you down just as much as the emotional and the physical, especially if you're struggling with, a loss and wondering, well, what comes next, right? What happened to my loved one?
Right.
So, yeah.
That's right, on Monday, and I hadn't really looked at it that way because, we talked, part 1 deals with the emotional aspect, and that's very familiar. You can feel crappy or feel whatever. And then the physical aspect that, you can physically decline as you go through grief. And I never really thought about the spiritual aspect, which is, if you don't have a future, if there's nothing to believe in and that gets, taken away by grief, then that makes a lot of sense that you should focus it. So when they're in this part, what are you looking at? What are the things that you are addressing?
Well, we talk a lot about the spiritual energy centers and how they work and what they influence. Some of those things being more metaphysical kinds of things like your intuition, for example, or your ability to sense things. We talk a lot about the clair senses, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the clair senses. Those are clairvoyance and clairsentience and claircognizance. Those abilities where you just know something or where you just feel something.
Right.
And when you're grieving, a lot of those things shut down. And so Reiki has the ability to open up your energy centers so that you experience those things. And in some ways, it really gives you an opportunity to get in touch with, something that's bigger than yourself. That may be signs and messages from your loved one. That may be just a sense or belief that your loved one's okay. So we talk about the clair senses. We talk about angels. I'm big with angels. The angels have really gotten me through life. So we talk about the angels that can help you when you're grieving. We talk about sign. Yeah, go ahead.
Do they have to be angels?
They don't have to be angels, but the angels, for me, and this is part of what I focused on, is that people don't realize that there are specific angels that, help you to get through your grief. One of them is Archangel Azrael. We talk about the different levels of angels. You've got your guardian angel. My guardian angel is constantly going like this, like, what the heck is she doing? But if you don't ask for help, and sometimes, emotionally, physically is one thing, but spiritually, you don't, where do I go to get spiritual help? The angels could be someone that you ask, and we talk about the different angels that can help. And for me, they've been very helpful. So we kind of break down the angelic realm in logical terms. We talk about the clairsenses, like I said. We talk about being aware of signs that your loved ones could be sending you, right? Because for me, I found, especially with my friend Joy, that was the first devastating loss that I had really experienced. And at first, because she died by suicide, I'm thinking, where is she? Is she in some place where she's stuck or whatever? So I said, if you can hear me, send me a sign so that I know you're okay. And I would smell her perfume. I mean, it was like, I can't explain it. I mean, those things happened. I believed them. I believed that she was okay. And that spiritual sense that came with that, I mean, I have to say that really got me through my grief, because I knew, one, she wasn't stuck. Two, she was okay. And three, that, oh my gosh, she can hear what I'm asking, so she's not very far away. So even though we don't have that physical relationship, we can still have the spiritual and emotional relationship with our loved ones. And so to me, the spiritual side of things really helped me look at life in a different context. And I tell people it kind of saved me, because Joy was very, very active at first in the beginning in letting me know she was not far away from me. So I never felt alone in my grief about her.
I'm fascinated by religion or energy constructs, or even any construct that exists to give you a framing of how to look at the world, how to look at how and why we're here, whatever. And I mean, I've put my foot in many different ones, from some really super esoteric ones that may sound very scary, but it's similar to the placebo effect, in that you don't need to, it doesn't have to be real for it to work. You don't have to have proof. You don't have to have a truth. It's if you adopt a system and you work the system, you get the benefits from it. And it doesn't just have to be one system. I mean, I guess the point, I would typically be skeptical, of things, as angels coming down and the archangels up here. And yet, what I've learned over time is that if you're open to it and you commit to it and you buy into the system, it actually bloody works, which is amazing, isn't it?
Well, and it's more than that. I think it's more the synchronicities, because you can have these things happen and recognize them and just poo-poo them or second guess them or just say, yeah, whatever. But over time, after a while, that white feather that floats down every time you're having a bad day, you're kind of like, all right, this is like the 10th white feather that I've seen. This is not normal. And I think after a while, you start to think, maybe there is something to it. So you don't even have to have any sort of spiritual or religious beliefs, because to me, I think that they keep trying to get your attention. And at some point you realize, this is not coincidence that I'm getting this single white feather, or that I'm smelling. I mean, because I didn't believe it when Joy died, because I believed it, but I wasn't sure. And I think because she died by suicide and I was raised as a Catholic, I thought, I was taught they go to hell or they go to limbo or wherever they go. And I'm like, oh my God, where is she? And I struggled with that. And I think she was there to remind me just by smelling her perfume. She had a very distinct smell because she also smoked. So it was like her smoke and her perfume together. It wasn't like I was in the mall and I could smell the perfume as I walked by the perfume section. It's like I'm in my car, and I smell her. So after a while, you start to think, okay, no, this is not a coincidence, you know? And then when, as you said, when you open your mind to it, it happens all the time. I mean, I can't count how many times all three of my loved ones, especially my dad, you know, send signs and messages. And really that gives me so much comfort. It may not work for other people, but I think knowing about it and being open to it and not second guessing yourself. And they've done studies, right? You can talk to just about anyone and say, has any of these things ever happened? Have you ever found a feather when you were thinking about somebody? Or did you ever look down and there was a penny, you know, on a day where you really needed, you know, a sign that things were going to be okay? And most people will say, yes, that has happened to me. So I don't know. I'm just a firm believer in it. And they've really showed me from the other side that they're very actively reminding us of that.
It ultimately, for me, it comes down to, you know, grief is, particularly with, you know, dealing with loss and death and, you know, suicide that you've been dealing with. Grief is left with the living, isn't it? I mean, it's the whole grief journey is your grief journey, and therefore is ultimately how you feel, how you allow the universe to make you feel. That is what moves you forward, you know, to some kind of resolution. Because ultimately, I mean, I remember from my own experiences, you know, when it happens, you're in that, you know, state of shock or, you know, that discombobulated period. But there comes a time, for most of us, when we are on that other side, and you don't remember crossing that line at the time, but at some point you're able to look back and go, I'm actually on the other side of that. I mean, would you say that's fair?
Right. I mean, it's funny, and this isn't in the course, but I remember my dad before he died saying that. I mean, literally, he, you know, was in the hospital and he was having all kinds of experiences the last week before he died. And he was able to explain to me in one coherent moment about going to the other side and what he saw and all of that. And yeah, I didn't know what to think about that, but in talking to people who have been or lost a loved one or been through a near-death experience themselves, what he said is totally in line with what all of the other people are saying. So, you know, I don't know, it's hard to discount that stuff. I mean, it's one thing to think about it, read books and dream and whatever and argue, but when you have somebody you love say, you know, this is what happened to me, I mean, it's hard not to believe that.
I mean, if you're going to put together a course on how to help yourself with grief, not to address the spiritual side, not to address that, I think would be a huge omission.
Well, and I think even if you don't believe anything, there are things that we all have the ability to do. Like I said, with the clairsenses, we all have the ability to feel things. We all have the ability to know things. I mean, how many times has something happened when you go, hey, I knew that was going to happen. You know, I mean, just driving sometimes, I knew there was going to be a traffic jam or whatever. And it's just taking those things to the next level. And even if you don't believe in them, it's a fun experiment to try, because you may get some sort of, you know, great experience that comes out of it. And it may reshape, you know, your spiritual beliefs in ways that surprise you. And I think, you know, that's learning, right? That's learning and growing.
That's the, you know, exciting isn't the right word, but that's the super intriguing part of this whole course. Because as we talked about, it's going to resonate with people who are ready. You know, it's going to resonate with people who, I mean, nobody says, oh, I think I'll just take a grief course today. But, you know, so people who are at that point in their grief journey where they're like, okay, I need to do something. And this course is going to give them that, and it's going to give them tools, it's going to address different aspects. And you're right, if you haven't been exposed to Reiki before, you haven't been exposed to some of these, what are fairly esoteric constructs, if you keep an open mind, you might be stunned and surprised by what you get by the end of it.
Right, and I think people tend not to talk about it. So if it's written about, or if you're learning about it in a course, it may actually bring some recognition to experiences you've already had, but didn't realize that there might be something more to it. And I think, as humans, we our ego mind tends to discount it. But if you read about it and say, well, yeah, I've been getting, this white butterfly that flies by every time I think about my mom, it's like, I never even thought that might be her. And then you start to pay attention to it. So I think, it gives people an opportunity to, think about life in a little bit of a different way.
And if they, follow your, not example or experience, but if in doing that, regardless of whether somebody can validate it or invalidate it, if they ultimately feel better.
Exactly.
Then that's what it's about, isn't it?
Right. And I mean, I can say that I certainly didn't sit down with people after Joy. I smelled Joy's perfume and say, hey, guess what, everybody? My best friend who just died, I could smell her perfume. They would have thought I was crazy. So I think now I realize that so many people have that experience, but they don't want to talk about it for fear of being judged or criticized. And in reality, it's a beautiful human experience. It's a beautiful spiritual experience. And I think if we shared it more, we would realize that happens all the time, all the time.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you, Sharon. I mean, I love these discussions. I love learning more about it because it's brilliant. We're going to have one more of these on Friday. We'll wrap up the series. But I think, we may do, I don't know, we'll have a chat. We may do some more of these going forward because you're right, there's not a lot of discussion about grief. There's not a lot of discussion about these things, and there should be more, shouldn't there?
There should be, yeah. I think that's what saved me, is being able to talk about it and finding that safe place where you can talk about it, even through a course or a book or whatever it is. It's that safe space. So that's really important as you're trying to heal.
Yay. All right, Sharon, thank you very much. Have a groovy couple of days. I'll see you Friday, and goodbye, everybody out there. We're going to end this broadcast now.